Welcome back to the School Hours CEO podcast. I, of course, am your host, Danielle Gray, and I am so excited for you to meet today's guest, Alana Sparrow, because this woman is a powerhouse of grounded, soulful energy work. She's a multimodality energy healer, a Reiki Master Teacher, and an intuitive who helps people get to the root cause of what's showing up in their body, their mind, and their life, whether that's chronic illness, anxiety, burnout, or feeling totally disconnected from your purpose. Alana's story is so powerful because she didn't always live in the wooniverse, as we'll talk about later. She's got an MBA, a corporate background, and knows exactly what it's like to go from high functioning but disconnected to fully aligned and lit up from within. So for my School Hour CEO listeners, if you've been pushing through, feeling stuck, or just flat out tired, this one's going to help you shift some serious energy. She's also a mom like us. She gets the juggle and she brings the kind of insight that lands in your body. So Alana, I am so excited to have you. We talked a little bit before we started recording, and I am so excited to have you here today.
Thank you so much for having me here today. It's a pleasure.
Wow, this is so good. So let's just go to the beginning. So you weren't always in the wooniverse, as you say. So what led you from corporate and an MBA to full-on energy work and intuitive healing?
Yeah. Well, it was a long and winding road. And to the extent that I can help people shorten that path a little, I love to. So thank you for asking that, because I had been born with many, many deep spiritual gifts, like intuitive gifts and medical intuition and animal communication, and really just a very strong clairvoyance, a lot of different gifts. And I grew up in a household that highly invalidated these things. So everything that was in my bones and just, that I'd be called to explore, like if it was astrology or oracle cards or whatever, would be frowned upon and negated. And any of my abilities would be like, oh, what a lucky coincidence or whatever. So of course it makes it really, really hard to know who you really are when you grow up in a place like that. And, I love my family dearly. It's just, that's how they were raised. That's their perspective. And it still kind of is their perspective.
Right.
But, it took me really having many different experiences and I guess trying on different identities, like going and getting that MBA and working, in the entertainment business. And then ultimately, because I've always been such an animal person, I worked in the animal not-for-profit thinking, oh, well, this is a marriage of kind of, my background and skills and animals, and still not finding fulfillment. Like, it was really interesting. I was getting closer, right? But not. And then finally, in the lockdowns in 2020, things really kind of came to a head, and I really opened up to like the truth of who I was and what I came here to do. And it was a big, like, sort of deal in my family, because that's not who my husband married. And we've been together a long time. And he was kind of like, okay, I knew you were kind of psychic, and I knew, but like, what's with this hands-on healing? And oh my God. And he was really having trouble with it. But now it's all good. It's all good. And I feel like every day I'm working and doing and living my purpose. So it just took getting through a lot of resistance, a lot of programming, a lot of blocks, and really, learning how to step into sign synchronicities, like how all of that works. Like I kind of knew it, and I kind of had my eyes closed at the same time for many, many years. And once you open up, you really, everything just kind of comes in. Like for me, it was just a whoosh, and it was just so instantaneous. And I'm really lucky because I get to work with these skills every day and feel very fulfilled doing so.
Oh, I love everything you just said. I have so many things I want to say. My goodness. So first, it's funny that you mentioned the lockdowns, because just the other day, maybe 2-3 days ago, I was thinking, how many beautiful things came out of that, right? How many home businesses were built? How many women really stepped into their power? And a lot of, it seems like a lot of the creators you see online, like that's really when that started, because people were bored or feeling alone, and they just needed an outlet to communicate with people, right?
Absolutely.
And so what a beautiful gift it was for you to be able to awaken to all of your gifts. And I know what you say about, your husband being kind of like, oh, what's going on here? Because my journey into entrepreneurship really led me into spirituality. And like we talked before we hit record, I openly talked about how I didn't believe in God, didn't believe in the universe. I didn't believe in any higher power, although I did believe that everything happened for a reason. So I think, this goes back to, like we were talking about, your authentic self. You're always in there. It's just all this stuff that you've been programmed to believe kind of piled on top. Right. And then, so when my path led me to spirituality, which is where I know I always needed to be, but I needed network marketing and entrepreneurship to be kind of the breadcrumbs to get me to, I needed to want the money and the success to be open to looking at personal development, which led me to spirituality. And so when I got to deliberate manifestation, I started talking about, law of attraction and universal this and universal that. My husband was like, you're going to get our son taken away from us. Like, you sound like you're crazy. Honestly, we had these conversations. And I remember one time we were hiking in the middle of the forest, the three of us, and he had, I thought, already kind of come full circle and been okay with me, being like this. And he was kind of on board too and all this. And I said something about, I don't know, manifesting or something, to that degree. And then I saw him look behind him and I was like, did you just check to make sure there was nobody behind us that could hear me talking? And he's like, maybe. And I was like, what is going on here? So, I mean, and he's come on board now too, but it's just funny how it's, like you say, it's just this kind of, they're like, okay, I don't really know what's happening here.
Right. It was scary. I mean, no offense to Scientologists, but I live in LA and my husband kept going, oh my God, what's next? Are you going to join the Church of Scientology? Like, which is like really, really different from what I do. So it's kind of hilarious, but he like saw it all as one thing, right. Like almost like thinking I was going to join a cult. I don't know, but he's come really far. And I do think the resistance from friends, family members, because as you activate your light and you shine your light, like they're starting to see the things that, they have to also face and grapple with. Like, it's not something they can just look away from either. So it definitely is very triggering to a lot of people, and really stepping into your power and your authenticity will do that. But, you don't have to like hit people over the head with it. You just have to like live in your light and be the ripple. And yes, but also be aware that these things will come up, but then you know how to kind of handle it. Like, it's a journey for us too, right? As we kind of quote unquote come online.
Well, it is, because you have to, I always say, you have to become the woman you want to be, but really what that means is unbecoming who you're not and who you've been programmed to be and who you've been told to be. So let's talk about that, because being your authentic self is hard. It is hard, especially for people like me who are recovering people pleasers, who have, I now, because I know all these things about me, I've done a lot of, work in human design and energetics and, numerology, and I'm into all of the things. Right. And so, right. And so I'm a Leo sun and moon, Cancer rising. I'm in life path 9. I'm a 1-3 manifester. So I'm meant to help people and initiate and be in the spotlight, but not in an egoic way. And actually, that's one of the lessons that I have to learn, is to let go of the ego and do it for the fact that you're bettering humanity, not for yourself, and all of these things. And when you learn these things and who, it's like, it makes sense. But on the other hand, it's like, wow, that's, heavy. That's a lot. And people don't know me as that. Right. So how do you, I mean, like you say, it kind of happened all at once. So how do you just step into this new version when sometimes it feels like you're becoming a whole different person?
You are. I mean, I think it goes kind of somewhat hand in hand, like what you're talking about with what I would, call a spiritual awakening, which honestly, spiritual awakenings are messy and they kind of turn your world upside down. And it's that, I really love the movie The Matrix, because it's a lot like you're Neo and you just suddenly like learned that, everybody's plugged into the Matrix and now you see the truth. And it's kind of like earth shattering. Your whole world, what you see, you can't unsee, and you'll never go back into the Matrix at that point, right? You just can't. And so it takes a lot, because I mean, for me, it felt like, oh my God, like things were just like and I was living in the upside down. And I mean, it was kind of bonkers for a little while. And so that's where the whole part about trust and developing, like, trust in yourself and ultimately, and, your own higher self or your higher power or guides, however you want to describe it. And I don't want to like program any of those terms because they can mean a lot of different things to different people. But I will say that it's very helpful to give yourself grace during this time, because it doesn't just like happen, like overnight. It is a process, and it's an ongoing process. And when you really obviously get super into it, you realize it's a lifelong process. It's like part of what we're doing day in and day out. Like there's always more to do, and there's always more to learn, and there's always more shadow work, so to speak, that you can be doing. But it doesn't have to be like, there's no there. It's just, it's the process. It is. And it's in that, of course, that you really find yourself in the beauty. And I definitely didn't have very many people like supporting me initially. Like I have a whole community now, and it's a totally different thing. And it is so freaking helpful to have a community of like-minded people. So I'd say like step one, that is most important thing, is to
100%.
Some people that you can lean on and that are going through this too, or have gone through this as well.
Absolutely. Yeah. That is crucial, because it can be very lonely. I find that me specifically, and then a lot of the people that I have come into contact with since I started this journey, both as a coach and just before, even when I was in network marketing, is your physical reality at that point is a reflection of who you had been, not who you're becoming. So you have all these people with all of these different thoughts and values and jobs that are reflective of who you once were and who you were aligned with. But now you're kind of in this limbo of like, I don't really have anybody who gets it right now.
Yeah.
Right. So it can be very lonely. So we need to, so we need to have that community of people that we can lean on, especially as moms too, because, all of this, whether you're talking about business or motherhood, it all bleeds together, because how you do one thing is how you do all things. Right. And nothing will bring up your limiting beliefs and the shadow work you need to do more than being a mother and being an entrepreneur.
Right? At the same time, you get the double whammy of that one. Yeah, totally.
Yeah. So it's important that we are aware that the journey does take a long time, and there is no there. And I love that you said that, because I remember previously have been very type A, eldest daughter syndrome, the whole thing. It's all of what they say is true. Right. And I wanted to just get there. Like, just how do I, like, what's the path? Like, who can I pay? What can I buy? What can I do that's going to get me to the other side? And when I heard somebody say for the first time that it never stops, like this journey never ends, I remember being really upset actually at first. I was like, what are you talking about? I want to because I was still stuck in performing, finish the grade, get the A, whatever. Right. And I was like, what do you mean? But then I realized, with a lot of, compassion and self-love and more inner work and all of that, that was part of my problem, was that I wanted there to be an end, right? And I just needed to be okay with it being this beautiful evolution of who I'm becoming. And then when I looked back and I saw, okay, well, look, these breadcrumbs laid from, maternity leave to network marketing to entrepreneurship to, to spirituality to all of this. So why would I think that the rest of it would be different?
Right. You're right. But you basically had to release some of that programming that you had, which is really very much programming about, you have to get this, you have to get this grade, you have to win this, raise or whatever. That's just programming, right? That's not true. Because I think like at the end of the day, when you really step into not just, being told this, but really feeling it and embodying that we are much more than our 3D physical bodies, that we have so many gifts and powers and skills. I mean, it because you teach when you've been coaching with manifesting. So that you can't be in that space without knowing this, obviously.
Right.
But I always say that, our human 3D bodies, it didn't come with a user manual. And most people get born and live and die, and they have not figured out how to do very much at all with their 3D bodies, like in the sense of how to truly use it as almost like an expensive piece of biotech, like a very unbelievable piece of biotech. But like all of the things that we can do, we all can do. We have, psychic abilities, all of us, intuitive abilities. We have the ability to heal and self-heal. We have the ability to manifest and create the life that we want. So we are creator beings. That's like who we are. And sort of really understanding all of this and stepping into that is really a part of stepping into your power, which of course in turn, helps you be a better mom, helps you be a better business owner. But you can't be that, until you've really started to clear. So that clearing of ancestral issues and, your inner child work that you might need to do, the shadow stuff that I actually don't think, so I don't want to slam like talk therapy, but when you only do that, you're probably not going to get that far with this work.
Right.
Like a huge part of this is like showing up like with trust in yourself and faith. Like you can do a lot of this by yourself.
100%. I find a lot of the time, well, maybe not a lot of the time, I have found a pattern. I've noticed something in some of the people that come to me and especially the ones that are very much still in the talk therapy, and maybe they're journaling, but that's kind of as far as it's going, is they are looking for more limiting beliefs to undo, more things to work through before they get where they think they need to be. And I have to say to them, look, you don't need to go looking for anything. It will naturally show itself to you as you are ready, as your path is laid out, as you need to learn these things and overcome these things and up level in these ways and become this version of yourself. Those things will just kind of show up, and you won't be able to ignore it either. You don't need to go digging for it. And by you thinking that you need to be this many steps here or in this stance already or whatever, like you're already losing, because you're not letting where you are now be enough, with the understanding that there will be more.
Yeah.
You know
And
what
you're talking about really is about learning how to just surrender and let go of control. Right. And I mean, I think that's been a really tough one for me. And that's a really important lesson for, solopreneurs, because we wear a lot of hats and we think we have to kind of like do everything. And that's actually like, yeah, you can do that. But when you do that, you're kind of blocking a lot of the alignment and the flow that you would have if you kind of surrendered, like surrender to like, oh my God, I know what's gonna like what, I'm excited to see what's gonna unfold. I know if I take this step will lead to other steps. I don't have to know what those other steps are. It doesn't really matter right now. I don't need to know, except to trust that, the universe has my back and that my higher self knows what I need to be working on.
Right.
Right.
So what are some of the sneaky ways that we give our power away without realizing it, especially as moms and entrepreneurs?
Yeah. Wow. Gosh, that's a big question, right? I mean, for one thing, I think a lot of time it's very easy. And, I speak from experience because this is true too. I just am much better at catching myself and I have tools now. Right. But it's very easy to not be in your energy, meaning that you're not fully embodied in your 3D body. You're worrying about the past. Guess where your energy is? It's in the past. You're worrying about the future. You're in the future. You're not here. You're not in the present moment. You're not embodied in this exact time, which only can exist like in the now, right? So when you're not fully present, I assure you are not fully in your power. It's either forward or back, or you've given power away to other people. You've left your energy, so to speak, with others, or you let them make decisions. And this is a big, huge pet peeve of mine. But like, for example, when people get really hooked on, seeing a psychic or even going to a therapist all the time to get their answers, they're giving away their power.
Right.
Because they should be able to figure this out for themselves, because they have the tools. Like I said, they need to learn how to use their equipment, their body, and their intuitive mind. And so I think that's definitely one way that we kind of are not all in our power. We give away our power. We give away, to everything really, because your truth is your truth, and everybody has their own truth. But like, you have to be very clear that you're working, with yourself. And so with that comes a whole lot of other things, right? Like spiritually speaking, like being in neutrality and not judging and being able to, recognize when things come up for yourself that you have to still keep doing the work. You're always going to be doing the work.
Always.
You accept that.
Yeah.
That the more excited you'll be about doing it, because like, it's fine. It's not bad. It's just why we're here.
Right. Right. And I think, social media, I think, is a blessing and a curse, because, it allows us to do things like this. You and I wouldn't have met if it wasn't for social media. Right. So I love it. I'm all for it. But I find that a lot of the time, especially, and I think it starts with not being in our power, and then we give more of it away when we're looking and making comparisons to people who look like they're more successful than us, or further along, or doing better, or whatever. But we need to remember that they're writing a totally different book. Their path looks totally different than ours. And I don't know about you, but personally for me, I found that, when I finally got past that, what I realized was the women that I was looking up to and comparing myself to, they weren't wives. They didn't have kids. They don't, they don't deal with any of the mental load that I'm dealing with as a mother. And not to say that I love being a mom. I love it. It's my favorite thing in the whole world. But it's a lot. It's a lot. You're constantly keeping track of all the things, and whether you like it or not, you are worried about your kid, no matter what. Hoping he's having a good day at school, or hoping something goes well, or this thing is coming up, or is he nervous about this thing, or how is this kid treating him, or just whatever is happening, right? How is he making out at school? And like we talked about before we hit record, like both of our kids, they're not really into traditional school. They get it. They see right through it. They understand that they're trying to be groomed to be employees, and they are not meant to be employees. So they are over it, right? But they have to go because I cannot homeschool you. It's just
and for social reasons and
all the reasons. Yeah. No, it's a good, I do. Yeah. And that's why I continue to send him, because for the most part, it's a good environment. He's learning skills that he needs to have, especially I've only got the one. We don't have that social thing built in. We don't have the learning to share thing built in, and I know all of that. So,
yeah.
But so these women, they don't get it, and there's nothing wrong with that, and that's fine. But I noticed there was a huge gap in the marketplace of moms proudly momming and running a business that feels good and that they're in their power in.
Right. Yeah.
Right.
And also, thinking about showing up as a mom, if you're not in your power and you're not living really from like a soul aligned perspective, you're not really showing up for your kid the way that you would if you were like meeting those needs for yourself.
Right. This is so important. Yes.
So doing that work on yourself. And I just got like chills, like talking about this with you, because so true. Like, you will show up as a different person for your kids, and that you're showing up as a more authentic person. You're modeling that for them, which is huge. Instead of like watching, mom, like, oh my God, I'm so stressed and I have to, be at whatever it is that's not like, they're never present. They're not in their body. They're either in the future, or they're in the past, and they're not connected with who they really are. Like, meaning by that, because that can mean a lot of things, but like, what did they come here for? What are those gifts that kind of came in for them when they were young? You kind of always have them. What are gifts that maybe you haven't yet found? And usually these clues are there for you. You could look at like, what lights you up, like in your heart. And this is a big one. And this is so big, the heart space, because if you really start to learn how to drop into your heart, for one thing, you will make better decisions, because they will be more aligned decisions, but you will be much more present and loving for your family too,
Yeah,
because
I can imagine.
You're honoring yourself and the relationships that you have. But I think so much of the programming that we talk about in the society today, it's like it puts us in our head. It puts us in the analyzer. It puts us in the logic brain, whatever you want to call it, which is like the opposite of being in that heart space and the intuitive side of who we all are.
Right. Right. I do know 100%. And I've been the one living in her head. Excuse me,
Yeah, me
living
too.
in her head. I've been the one not living in her body. I've been the one living in the past or the future or wherever. I have been there, and full disassociation.
Yes.
I didn't even know how to identify my own emotions until my kid started kindergarten and he brought home this sheet and I was like, oh, okay, this makes so much sense, And so, and part of that is,
I'll just I want to make a little point on that one, because this is this is a shout out to all the empaths, the clairempaths and the clairsentient people out there. What you just said is so interesting about being in your emotions, and your kid like learning in school about emotions. But a lot of us, we have a lot of different psychic gifts, and some of us are empaths, and some of us have, this is a really strong one for me, but being clairsentient, which means that I feel things. I could read a room or read people or whatever, like in my body. So guess what happens with that? If you don't realize it, and I mean 90-something% of people don't know this about themselves, you are absorbing and picking up that which isn't yours. So your kids' emotions, you could be thrown by that. You may not have anger, but they do. It's not your anger, right? And at the same token, the flip side is also true. Like your kid can be absorbing the emotions of those around them. It's not theirs either. But people aren't taught about what I call, the clair senses, the intuitive senses, or the subtle senses, of which there are at least 8, probably more. And without knowing that, like, it's very, very hard to really show up as yourself. And again, being so affected by the energy of others. A lot of kids today are what I'm talking about. They're more intuitive, they're empathic, probably a bunch are clairsentient, and they don't know this. So they're picking up the emotions of those around them. Could be their teachers, could be their friends, could be the news, society, the collective. They're more sensitive to that. And like helping, your kids and yourself work this through and figure it out. It's really important. Like if they learn nothing else today from us, like just learning that is so important. And there's tools that can help, right?
Yes. And I'm so glad that we went that direction, because my son definitely is empathic. His dad is. I don't know if I am, but he definitely is. My son 100% is. He also is, I'm pretty sure, claircognizant. I know that I am.
Mm-hmm.
And it's funny because before I knew that, you just know things. And they're like, well, how do you know that? I'm like, I don't know. Like, this is kind of a morbid example.
The most annoying person in the room when people aren't dialed into that. Like, how do you know? I don't know, but you have to trust me.
Yeah, I don't know. It's so funny because this is kind of a morbid example, but there was one long weekend. My husband and I were leaving, and my parents-in-law had a Chihuahua. Now, to be fair, he was old and he was having heart problems and all this. But when we left, I just knew that by the time we got home, Chico was not going to be there anymore. It was just this weird, like, just knowing. And then we got home and they said, okay, Chico passed away. And I said, I knew it. And it was like insensitive of me. And she's like, what do you mean? And I was like, I don't know. I just had this, like, I just knew it. When we left, I knew that he was not going to be here when we got back. And it just didn't make sense to me. And so this is like in the last, we've only been married 12 and a half years. So this is in the last probably decade that this started happening. Right. And it's weird, but it's interesting. And so I know my son is too, because every once in a while he'll just say whatever it is, something. And I go, how do you know? I don't know. I just know. And I said, okay,
and they have to learn. And this is so important, like for yourself or your kids, you have to learn to start to trust that.
Yes.
You have to learn. So this is where, like, learning how to distinguish between, what your ego mind wants to be true, and then like the knowledge of this sort of knowing and a soul level knowing, which is what you're talking about, which is claircognizance in that case, which is clear knowing when you just kind of know, but you have to really learn how to distinguish that, right? Because I see people do that, with like, say, lottery tickets. Like, oh, I know I'm going to win the lottery. I got to go buy. And it's like, no, that's your ego mind. Like, that is your ego mind. I have yet to see somebody just know it and get the winning ticket,
Right. Yeah, it doesn't work that way. But for me, how I started practicing it was just like when I started to really understand that I could use it to my advantage, and it wasn't just some random thing that I just randomly knew these things, is if I get a nudge to do something, I will just do it. And I've noticed the times that I've had the nudge to say, grab this thing, or don't forget this, or, take this exit, or whatever it is. And then I don't do it. I'm like, and you know what? I had that came into my mind and I didn't do it.
Yes. So that's how you learn. Like what
Yes.
you're just talking about, that's like really learning how to trust your gifts, right?
Right.
So in your case, like your journey with and claircognizance is a hard one. It's great, Claire, to have, but it's a tough one to learn how to work with initially because it's very hard to distinguish that from like what we said, the ego mind. So the only way you can really learn it, the way you're exactly what you said, like that trial and error. Like, oh, when I listen to these nudges, look what happens. And when I don't listen, you know, and you start to see like, wow, you know, I've just like fell into 3 potholes that I didn't have to fall into. And I see next time I get that nudge, I'm going to say yes and like watch what happens. And every time you start to do that, you'll see that you kind of flow. There's just a more like easy flow to your life.
Yeah.
When you're following those breadcrumbs, as you say, and this is going back to like what I said about like learning how to use your body, like your nice fancy biotech human body comes with these amazing subtle senses that we're never freaking taught ever, right?
Yeah, no, exactly. And for me, it's been, like I say, it's been like a learning process, kind of like a flexing of a muscle, but also what I've noticed in you really can only know it in your own self, but I've seen it kind of happening too. But what I've noticed is the first initial thing that I think is the claircognizance. And then anything after that is ego. I find that the ego is slower and it's also louder. It's also a lot louder. And that's why it's easy to get tricked, because the claircognizance, it's like I also see it as my higher self telling me what's going on, right? But it's just quiet because you can just trust it. It doesn't need to like make this whole grand, Las Vegas show sign announcement, because we are supposed to be able to just trust it without needing it to be loud. And so the ego gets loud because it's like, hey, no, over here, that's not safe, or no, do this instead, or no, that's not. No, every time.
I love that.
Yeah, every time that I've fallen into listening to the big Vegas sign, it doesn't go well.
No. And what you said, it goes to one of my sayings for clients. I say, spirit whispers and ego screams. Yes. And that's absolutely right. So it is a training of exactly what you're talking about. It's usually very quick. It's usually the first thing, right? That gut instinct, whatever you want to call it, that people, that real quick intuitive flash, that's what you have to trust. So it's like learning to be really quick on that, like going with that. And then all the other chatter that comes in afterward, that's the ego mind. That's like your logic brain and full of programming, or best, or don't trust, So anyway, I love that you said that, because that's absolutely right. It's important people learn to distinguish. And one silly and maybe silly way to learn how to do that, I mean, you can study and you can train, like learn how to use your intuition. But one of the best things for me on my journey with that is I trained to an advanced level in mediumship. And I did that not because I want to be a medium. Like I'm not a working medium, and I'm not going to be a medium. That's not my calling, and nor is it my strong suit. But that training, freaking amazing for learning all of those little subtle things, because when you talk with spirit, I mean, I can do it, but when you do it, you've got to be like so dialed into those very, very quick things, and like really, super tuned into those whispers. And that's, which with practice, they won't really be whispers. It'll be much more obvious, obviously,
right.
But that was amazing for me, because it helps with all the other work I do. So I'm really, really happy I studied that, even though that was one of those leaps. Like, I don't know why I signed up for a mediumship class. That was not in my, playbook of things that I would be signing up for.
Right. I love that so much.
Yeah.
I love that. So talk to me about how do you pull all of your expertise together into your program, Meet Your Magic?
Oh, Meet Your Magic. So that's like I've been doing that one-on-one for people, and I'm actually now moving it to a group hybrid program for the fall, like online. But it really is, it's combining all these different things we've been talking about, about learning how your intuition works, because we do all work differently. Because like Danielle, you just said, hey, I'm really claircognizant, and I guarantee you have other clairs going on too, but like you sort of usually have like a stronger one, and it helps to identify how your clairs work and how it comes in, because it can come in a little differently for each of us. So figuring all that out is really important. Learning how to like really reclaim your energetic sovereignty, which is about all the tools, like sort of how I get present. How do I stand in my power? How do I calm my energy back? How do I get rid of other people's energy from my space? Like learning how to create that, creating boundaries Very important. Boundaries. And you said you're a recovering people pleaser. Hello, boundaries.
Yeah, boundaries are like not just with other people, with myself too. Because like I said, how you do one thing is how you do all things. And I found when I started setting boundaries with myself, made it easier for me to start setting boundaries with other people. Because I just said, no, I'm not available for this anymore. This is important to me. So I'm going to get up, or I'm going to do this, or I'm going to follow through on that, or I'm going to eat better. I'm going to drink more water. I said I wanted this, and I'm going to make sure that it happens. And then because I was able to honor my own boundaries, it gave me more confidence to be able to set the boundaries with other people. And it really just allowed me to command the energy around me better.
Yeah. And as you know, I mean, the universe responds to these things, right? Like you could do the internal work, the outside reflects it, and vice versa. So, right. That's really important. But, we're teaching things like that, helping people. There's a lot of healing in it, because I do work with many, many different modalities, although like Reiki is kind of like my sort of skeletal system. I'll always return to Reiki healing, but helping people clear a lot of the programming, limiting beliefs, ancestral, so there's just sort of a different weeks. We're doing different kinds of clearing. So it's deeply healing. I mean, you can't start and end at the same person. You won't.
Right. Right. Of course.
And then helping them really learn how to align with their soul's purpose. And then that helps, to start to understand signs and synchronicities and how to read that. It's like a language, again, that we all have, but we're not taught.
Right.
So it's something that, doesn't come naturally anymore to us, because we've kind of had that stripped out. So
right. From a very young age too, we start to be, and it's not even our parents or primary caregivers' fault. It's just, that's how they were raised and programmed. And that's how their parents were raised and programmed. That's why you're talking about ancestral, like it goes back, like generations of programming.
And the programming, in many cases, like as an example, you might have like self-worth, self-esteem, self-confidence issues. And it is very often something that you've come in with, because it's like you're carrying that like from your parents. Like it could go all the way back on your father's side. And, nowadays, because of everything happening on the planet, a lot of us, like, we're the ones that are like here to stop that, like to heal that, to end that, to be like, oh, you know what? That's great. I see it for what it is. Doesn't have to be this anymore. And you're going to be that cycle breaker. And in that case, you're also like releasing, forward and back on that generational line, which is beautiful. Like it's really beautiful work. So, and it's not hard. It's actually much easier, I think, than people think. It's like, people sort of think, oh my God, like years of talk therapy. It's like so quick. It could just be one big energy healing, and then like learning how to work with things as they come up. And like you said, like doing that work for yourself, like what you did to figure out how your claircognizance works.
Right.
Like just looking at it all, I just sort of feel like we're all, we're always all works in progress, and we're all exploring this, and just learning these tools just makes it so much easier. And I don't know, I just feel like it sort of smooths out the rough edges. I love to say that the universe will always, or could be, your higher self, your guides, but they'll throw you a little pebble first. Then they'll throw you a stone when you don't notice that pebble. And then you get the boulder. Okay. So like what we want is to try to smooth things out, so we don't need that boulder.
Right.
Like we could notice that pebble, or we can maybe notice the stone, and then we can course correct, and we can pay attention to the triggers and the things that like are pointing toward where we need to do the work.
Right. I love that. I reference it the same but different. I say, you're either gonna follow the nudge, or you're gonna get shoved off a cliff. But either way, you're gonna get the message. So, how easy do you want to make it for yourself? Start training yourself to pay attention. Right. I love that so much.
Totally.
So if anybody's interested in doing Meet Your Magic with Alana, I'm going to put links below, as well as where to follow her, where to be in her space and energy more, in the show notes if you're listening on the podcast, and in the description if you're watching on YouTube. We would love it if you would leave us a question, or obviously follow us both. Feel free to leave a review, anything. This has been so good. This conversation has been amazing. I am so thankful that you were able to join us today.
Yeah, thank you so much. It's always so fun. I mean, I literally can talk about this for like another 3 hours straight.
Oh yeah, we could. Yeah, definitely. but if someone listening right now is feeling disconnected, off track, or just heavy in her energy, what's the first little step that you'd have her take?
I would say the best thing you can do, very underrated, is to breathe. Like consciously breathe. Like let's start with a couple of really nice deep breaths that you're really like breathing in through the nose and exhaling through the mouth. Like start right there. That's so simple, but it starts to kind of ground you into the present moment. And it takes you kind of out of what I call the monkey mind and, you know, starts to get you into a place where you could start to access higher levels of your consciousness. So breathing, and then part 2 to that would be grounding. So grounding yourself.
Grounding is so important. Grounding is so important because that's really how you can get present, right? Is to ground into be in your body.
Ground. Because without those, you really can't fully embody.
Right.
You have to have that. And then I guess step 3 would be clearing. So we ground and then clearing. So clearing that energy. And there's many, many different ways you can clear energy. But without that, again, you could be influenced by all the outside noise and other people's stuff and you know, whatever programming you're bringing into this. So those 3 things are like super important, right? And then that was sort of where I started. Then I would really want to kind of call my power back, be in my energy bubble before I do anything else. Like I will always start with that work, like right, that sort of in order before I do any intuitive work or reading or healing or any of that.
That's the foundation, the starting point.
And then the foundation. Yeah. I kind of call it, I sort of teach it as like energy hygiene.
I love that.
You know, it's like body hygiene and then there's energy hygiene, but it really matters. Like it really matters because a lot of we're walking around with some really like sluggish stuff going on. We've got some blocked chakras. We've got some like God knows what in our auric field. And that's really common, you know, and it's easy to fix. And it's the kind of thing like over time that you'll be able to do that for yourself, you know? Right.
And then with consistency, you just end up elevating into this new state, right? Because you don't have all this gunk in your auric field anymore.
Oh yeah. It makes such a big difference. And you just feel so much better, you know, like physically you feel better and you'll notice, you know, more intuitive stuff coming in as you do that because you're clearing those pathways.
Right.
So yeah, I mean, that's kind of where I would start people, certainly.
Right. Okay. Well, I mean, obviously we all need to be following Alana because there's just so many words of wisdom that she can share with us. I know. So again, thank you so much for being here today. This has been so amazing.
Yeah.
Just such a blessing.
Thank you, listeners. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. And we'll see you next time on the School Hour CEO podcast.